All rise.
The Kosovo Specialist Chambers is now in session.
Be seated, please. Madam Court Officer, please call the case.
Good morning, Your Honors. This is KAC BC 2020-06, the Specialist Prosecutor versus Hashim Thaci, Kadri Veseli, Recep Selimi, and Jakub Krasniqi.
Thank you. Today we'll continue with the testimony of witness 04746. I note that Mr. Thaci, Mr. Veseli, Mr. Selimi, and Mr. Krasniqi are all present in the courtroom. Before I invite the witness into the room, I remind you that as previously communicated, today we will not be sitting the third session. The hearing will therefore be adjourned at 1 p.m. Until tomorrow morning at 9. Madam Court Usher, please bring in the witness. Madam Prosecutor, is there any update on timing?
I expect to be finished today, Your Honor.
I'm sorry, say it again.
I expect to finish today. I think I will take most, if not all, of the first session, and then we'll assess, but I will finish today.
You may be seated. Good morning, witness. Today we will continue with your testimony. Thank you for being with us again today. I remind you to please try to answer the questions clearly with short sentences. If you don't understand a question, feel free to ask counsel to repeat the question or tell them you don't understand and they will attempt to clarify. Also, please remember to try to indicate the basis of your knowledge of the facts and circumstances upon which you are questioned. I remind you that you are still under the obligation to tell the truth stated by you in your solemn declaration. Please also remember to speak into the microphone, wait 5 seconds before answering a question, and speak at a slow pace for the interpreters to catch up. If you feel the need to take breaks, please let us know and we will accommodate you. We will resume with the direct examination by the SPO. Madam Prosecutor, you have the floor.
Good morning, Mr. Mustafa. You've mentioned Adam Damaci a number of times in your testimony. What was his official position in the KLA?
He was the director of the political directorate of the Kosovo Liberation Army, but above all, he was the leader of Albanian people for many years while we were under Serbian occupation.
Are you referring there to the overall political directorate of the KLA, or are you referring to a specific political office?
For me, this was the biggest political directorate of the KLA.
But, so I understand that for you it was the most important one, but which one was it?
From me, the office led by Adem Demaci in Pristina was the most important one.
So it was the KLA political office in Pristina that you led, is that correct?
Correct.
You've just indicated he was someone that was very important to you. Did you know him well?
Yes, I did know him well.
And clearly he had influence over you on political matters, is that right?
Yes. In general, I was very cooperative with teacher Demaci.
Would you say more so over you than other members of the KLA?
He was in general for the Albanian people and the KLA in its entirety, but to me, in my eyes, I recognize he was even more special to me.
Your Honor, I'd like to go into private session for a short series of questions relating to a specific individual.
Please take us to private session.
Your Honors, we're in public session.
Thank you. You may proceed, Ms. Lawson.
Thank you. Can we bring up document SITF 00243-091, and the English is the same with ET at the end. It is one we looked at yesterday, and we'll just call it up briefly again today. It should not be broadcast. And if we can please go to page 243132 in each. Mr. Mustafa, can you please look at entries number 14 and 15? Under the release column, it says, he has been engaged in U55. What does U55 refer to?
Ulpiana Pastepe.
Ulpiana 55.
Thank you. We can remove the document again. Yesterday, when we were discussing the extent to which Nazif Mehmeti reported or provided information on detainees to the zone headquarters, you stated it happened very rarely, and that's T5573 to 74. I'd like to refer to one of your prior statements with leave, Your Honour, one of the witness's prior statements.
Granted.
This was before the court in 2003, and the reference is SPOE 00119-323 at 119331. That's the English. And the Albanian is SPOE 00119-334 at 9343. And I'm going to read a portion of that to you. I kept myself informed about detainees, but I was not always informed about everything. There were people whose jobs it was to do that. Reports from all units were sent to the Chief of Staff. It might be possible that 1, 2, or 3 detainees might be brought in, and I would not be brought in, and some would be there for different acts. I asked for and received a report from Nazif Mehmeti directly. He was under obligation to report to the headquarters for any minor change. I believe there was some written instruction about that. Is that correct, that he was in fact under an obligation to report to the headquarters when making changes?
Your frequent questions now, but also the questions at the time by the prosecutor, seem to exaggerate this matter. It was not as important as we want to portray it. However, I stand by what I've always said. By insisting on the same question, we're just exaggerating things, as was the case with the administrative documents we discussed earlier, of which I had no knowledge, but in regards to which I have no reason to reject them. So I accept what I have said here.
Thank you. So I understand from that the issue of detentions is being exaggerated, but that you accept the information provided in this statement that I just read to you. Is that right?
I accept that Nazif Mehmeti was in charge, did his job honorably, and dealt with the detainees. And whenever this was necessary, he came and reported to me and to the zone headquarters of the operative zone with respect to the works being conducted or carried out there.
In fact, obliged to do so, isn't that right?
Certainly.
Did relatives ever come to the LAP zone command looking to locate the bodies of persons who had been detained there?
I don't remember specifically, however, they were allowed to come and visit their relatives.
So I'm going to change topic. Yesterday we were discussing visits by general staff members to the LAP zone in the second half of 1998, and specifically October was my question. I indicated then that there was a document I wanted to show which we would come back to, and we'll do that now. Can we please call up Mr. Zitia's book? The reference is SPOE 000-55678 at page 55838. And the English is SPOE 000-55799 ET revised 1 at page 55838. So it's referring here to a visit on the 27th and 28th of October 1998 by Hashim Thaci, Jakub Krasniqi, Bislam Zairapi, and Reem Bouya. Do you now remember that visit?
I know a visit took place, however, I'm not certain about the details as explained in the book. I know that Mr. Zitia wrote a good book and I complimented him on that. However, I cannot remember the details as described in the book, but I have no reason to deny it either.
Where did they come to? Was it the newly established headquarters in La Pasticia?
It is true that I do not remember. This was a time of exceptional, extraordinary times and commitment for each of us, and I don't remember. However, the records used as a source by Mr. Zitia could be accurate.
And given that the witness indicated he didn't remember, I'd like to refer to a prior statement, Your Honour.
It's granted. Thank you.
The reference is Part 5, page 10 in English, and it's Part 5, page 11 in Albanian. And I'll just read a small portion for now on this precise point. So on that date, at the end of October, those four, and when they actually came to the zone, that would have mean they come to what, your headquarters in La Pastiche? That was the question. Your answer, yes. Your newly established headquarters? Answer, yes. Does that assist?
I said it also in relation to the book of Judea that this could be the case, but I do not remember the specifics. I know they came for a visit. I cannot recall the details now.
Did they have the opportunity to meet with all of your command staff?
I don't think the members of the General Staff requested to meet with all commanders, but we certainly have introduced those they asked to meet with.
And where did the delegation eat and sleep?
In those houses where we stayed.
So in the same facilities that you were using in La Pastiche, is that correct?
I am not certain it was the same house, but somewhere in the area, in one of the houses in the village. You could use my prior statements prior to this. I stand by those. I have no reason to hide or conceal the visit from the General Staff.
Yes, and Your Honour, I will please put a small portion of a prior statement.
All right.
It's Part 5, page 17 in English, and Part 5, page 19 in Albanian. The question was, all right, well, did you introduce them to your senior commanders? Answer, yes. Question, for example, Latif Gashi. Answer, yeah. All of my staff, including brigade commanders, had the opportunity to meet them and talk with them. So I can't tell you specifically, but I believe that everybody met them because they had the opportunity to meet them, because they were having their meals at the same place that we had our meals. Does that remind you?
I see nothing different from what I said earlier. I cannot remember the details, but they would have been able to meet the staff members. They were in my presence too. I mean the members from my staff HQ.
What was discussed in your meetings with them on that visit?
Generally, the organization of the war and how to advance it further. It was the time of greater cooperation with an array of international organizations, and therefore that was an opportunity for us to advance our goals further.
Did it include both combat and political matters, the discussions?
The issue of preparations of the war effort on the part of the units, but also political matters too.
Did they provide instruction on anything in particular during that visit?
There must have certainly been an exchange on both sides, but I cannot recall anything in particular. It was generally to do with the conduct of the war and how it was proceeding. A number of issues would have been discussed.
How about civil administration structures?
It would have been possible to discuss that as well. The effort was to expand the Kosovo Liberation Army across the territory. And that was being done through the Directorate for Civil Organization.
And were there people selected during that visit to have responsibility for various civil administration matters?
I don't think there were appointments made in the course of the visit. However, we were able to appoint people afterwards, people who were never able to complete the set of tasks assigned to them because the offensives made that impossible.
Did those people subsequently assume certain positions after the war?
Some of them, yes.
What positions?
Mayors.
So mayors of municipalities, is that right?
Yes.
And when approximately did they take up those functions?
By the end of the war.
Can you give me an approximate date of what you're referring to?
Immediately after the entry of K4, the administration at K4's request pleaded with us to appoint people who would be responsible for the municipalities, which we did. At that time, the provisional government had also become operational, and so the heads of the municipalities in Pristina and Portuiev were appointed. I had an influence, so the people whose names I submitted were the ones who later became the mayors.
And did they fall under the provisional government structure then?
To be frank with you, I cannot recall the organizational chart at this point in time, but I know that they served as mayors for 5 or 6 months. The people that we appointed, that is, the people that we appointed in cooperation with all the relevant stakeholders or actors of the time.
So this would be June 1998. And on the general staff visit, did they provide you instruction on how to select those people and an idea of how to govern the municipalities after the war and also during the war?
Madam Prosecutor, we focused our conversations for the war times so that we could expand even further. I don't think that the General Staff or anyone else would have conceived at the time that we would be liberated so speedily, or what would happen after the war. However, given that I had assigned tasks to people in the course of the war because I respected them, I tried I tried so much for them not to be bypassed, but to be involved in politics and the administrative capacities after the war.
There was a ceasefire that had just come into operation at that time, though, wasn't there?
Yes.
And I'd like to put a short portion of a prior statement to the witness, please.
All right, go ahead.
It's part 5, page 15 in the English, and part 5, page 16 in the Albanian. And you said, so the same people that we appointed were the mayors after the war. I think that the General Staff, it was the reason the General Staff came to visit us at that time, excuse me, to instruct us how to select people and in order to have an idea how to govern the municipalities after the war and also during the war. Do you accept that, Mr. Mustafa?
Madam Prosecutor, that is exactly what occurred and how I described it. However, this was not meant to be as influential in the lab operational zone as we are making it seem now. However, we did discuss the organization of the political and civilian administration organization in as good a manner as possible, and we discussed the names. We discussed names, but I don't think that the General Staff at the time were aware of those names. This became known later with the end of the war when they started exercising their functions as mayors of those municipalities.
During that visit by the General Staff members, were there also matters that you wanted to raise with the General Staff?
Yes, it was a two-way conversation. It was to do with the war effort, the organization. We talked about everything, the details of which I cannot recall at this point.
What type of issues did you want to raise specifically with them for discussion?
On the conduct of the war. Issues to do with the organization. I informed them that I had a specific type of organization, that I had involved political subject in the effort. It was a special kind of organization. Because I was in close proximity to Pristina, I had the benefit of the advice from Thaci and his advisors. And so we had this kind of cooperation given the area we lived in.
And did the organizational matters that you wanted to raise, or that you did raise, include, for example, representation of the zones in the General Staff?
It may have been one of the issues discussed, but I cannot recall it in particular.
Did it include making public the composition of the General Staff?
At this point, I'm not certain about it.
Regulation of finances, was that an issue of concern to you?
The issues you mentioned were of a permanent nature, and we discussed them every time we met. We spoke about logistical issues and all the issues that had to do with the conduct of the war. However, I do not remember the details of what was discussed in this particular meeting.
I'd like to bring up a document, please. It's P00181, and the English is the same with ET at the end. And we can please go to page SPOE 00226666. Mr. Mustafa, do you see at the top of the page it gives a date of 27 October 1998, and it's headed Meeting with the LAP Zone Operational Staff. Do you see that?
Yes, I do.
And there's your name, and there are notes of some matters that you'd raised as needing discussion. Are those those are the type of matters we've just discussed that you would that would come up at each meeting, isn't that right?
I would be reluctant to comment on an unclear piece of handwriting whose origin is unknown. Even though I see nothing wrong in it, however, I'm reluctant to comment on someone else's work.
I understand. So starting with some of the delegation members, and we can take the document down, thank you. What was Hashim Thaci's position in the General Staff at that time?
I don't think I was aware of Hashim Thaci's position at that time. Hashim Thaci, however, had a number of tasks during and after the war, and I may make a mistake here and there. However, at the time I knew him as a soldier of the Kosovo Liberation Army, someone of significance in our fight for freedom. However, at the time that we are referring to in October, I don't think that I was aware what position he held.
Did you consider him to be an important person within the KLA?
People who visited were often thought of as important people within the Kosovo Liberation Army, and we had conversations with them. So everybody who came from Drenica, Dukajini, Shala, or everyone who came could not have had a conversation with me had he or she not been of significance. So from this one you can infer that I thought of them as being significant. He came in the company of the Chief of Staff, and therefore he was an important figure.
Was there anything else that gave you the impression he was important?
I can't recall any details.
How did the other members of the delegation treat him or respond to him?
At that time, I did not note anything in particular. It was too early to ask questions about people's political stature.
Your Honor, I'd like to put a prior statement to the witness, please.
All right.
It's part 5, pages 12 going on to 13 in the English, and part 5, pages 13 going on to 14 in the Albanian. And to provide the full context, I'll start reading slightly earlier in the transcript, which is entirely consistent with what you have said in your testimony, and then get to the relevant point. You said, so this is about the time when Hashim Thaci begins to emerge as a very important figure in KLA. But for us, the recognizable persons in here and in that hierarchy were Jakub Krasniqi and Bislam Zairapi. Question: did you know what, at the time that they visited at the end of October, what their positions were? So Hashim Thaci, what did you understand his position was? Answer: I know it may sound interesting to you, but I don't think he himself knew at the time what his position. What I knew was that he was important. With the benefit of hindsight, I know even more about it. But at the time, I can assure you that I didn't. All I know is that they showed deference to him, and I also showed respect to him. Question: when you say they showed deference, you mean the other 3 delegates who were with him? Answer: since they were showing respect towards him, I also paid my respects to him. Right. Question. Right. So Jakub Krasniqi, Bislam Zairapi, and Reim Buya, just so we're clear, were treating Hashim Thaci with a level of respect. Answer: I'm saying yes, I'm confirming it. And I can also say that at the time, I thought he was the one writing communiques. But now, of course, with later on I came to know more, but at that time I thought that he was a clever man who used to write communiques. And he himself was not interested in portraying himself as somebody important. Were the other members of the delegation treating Hashim Thaci with deference?
As I said at the time, yes, and I reaffirm it today.
Jakub Krasniqi, what was his role in the general staff?
He was the Kosovo Liberation Army spokesman.
Was there a time when he also occupied a second role?
I know I have seen documents that describe him as a deputy. However, as far as we're concerned, he was always known as a spokesman of the Kosovo Liberation Army. However, I am aware that records have emerged that suggest that he has also been a deputy. And when I mentioned Hashim Thaci as writing communiques, what I was referring to was the fact that he was communicating with the public. At the time, I thought of him as somebody in charge of public communications, communicating with the mass media.
And when you say deputy, do you mean deputy commander of the overall KLA?
Yes, that's what some records that I saw suggest. Through trials and other sources after the war, that's what I saw. However, I am saying here that at the time I knew Jakub Krasniqi as a spokesman of the Kosovo Liberation Army. He was a significant figure who I respected and I continue to respect.
Recep Salimi, he was another delegation member. What was his position in the General Staff? Or sorry, he wasn't on this occasion. What was his position in the General Staff?
He served as inspector in the Kosovo Liberation Army and staff member too.
So General Inspector, is that correct?
Yes, General Inspector in the Kosovo Liberation Army.
And also a member of the Zone Command. Apologies, General Staff. Correct. Also a staff member, you said. Also a member of the General Staff.
Yes, I think so.
Did you consider him to be an important figure in the KLA?
Yes. First met Recep Salimi. I respected him as a brave soldier and a significant figure in the war effort. He was persistent in the best organization of the KLA, just like the rest of us.
What was Kadri Veseli's role in the General Staff?
I knew and respected him. I knew he was in the General Staff. However, I know him a lot less than the others we've been discussing here. I'm not sure that I was aware of what position he held during the war. After the war, a lot has emerged that may affect the way I think now of what I thought at the time. I don't think we've ever discussed his position, so there's nothing to say.
Lawson, there's a technical issue going on in the courtroom. We need to take a few-minute break. So we will be adjourned for a matter of maybe 5 to 15 minutes. You may escort the witness out.
All right. All right.
we're told everything is working now. Something technical. Speaking of technology, there's a lot of equipment in here that generates a lot of heat. Yesterday it got quite warm in here, at least from up here. So if you notice that, please let us know because it's important that we're all comfortable in this environment. So you can bring in the witness, Madam Usher. Ms. Lawson.
Were you yourself a member of the general staff at any point in time, Mr. Mustafa?
Yes, Ms. Prosecutor, I was told that I was. For a time.
That
It could be February.
approximately how long were you a member of the general staff?
Perhaps 2 weeks, and then I returned to my zone, to my region.
Who told you that you were a member of the general staff?
I am certain that Bislimer Zurabi knew, but also those who were permanent members there knew about this. When I left my position, I don't remember informing anybody about that, or if I did, I must have informed Bislim Zurabi. I left my position on my own decision.
Was there someone who appointed you or told you to come and join the general staff?
The chief of staff.
Zarapi.
I think so.
Is there anyone else it could have been, or do you think it was Bislim Zarapi?
It could have been Jakub Krasniqi, but I don't think that it was someone else who communicated this decision to me.
You don't think it was someone else apart from one of those two, is that right?
I can't think of a third person who could have been involved in this now.
Were you given a particular assignment?
Yes, I was in charge of the logistics countrywide.
What matters fell under logistics? What type of issues were you dealing with?
Everything needed to everything related to the needs of a soldier and KLA and the KLA. At the time, I understood this primarily as related to weapon supplies of the KLA. This was a priority to me.
Where were the weapons sourced from?
From everywhere we could get them from.
Can you give a couple of examples of places that you were able to obtain weapons from?
Në zonën tim,
In my zone, I obtained weapons also from Serbia. Albania was a source where we could obtain weapons from, but also other locations wherever we could. Not in large quantities, but as weapons we could carry on our shoulders.
Bosnia, was that a location?
po
Yes, there were occasions when weapons came also from Bosnia.
What were the supply routes for weapons coming into Kosovo?
s'ka pas linjat.
There were no regular routes, but we got them wherever we could get them from. But the most realistic and possibility and place we could get weapons from was Albania. As zone commander bordering Serbia, I could get also weapons from Serbia using business supply lines.
Who was Plaku?
E di për kënd mendohet,
I know who you're referring to, but I did not know him.
Where was he based?
nëse është ky për çka po mendon se
If we're thinking about the same person, because there were other people having the same nickname, but I knew a person by the nickname of Plaku who stayed in Albania. I didn't know him, but I was aware that a person with this nickname was staying in Albania.
Do you know what type of matters he dealt with?
mundësia grumbullimit mirë
Collecting goods and equipment for the war.
Where did funding come from for the KLA?
kushdo që mundë.
Whoever could, there was a fund of the war called the 30%. I, in my region, was mainly financed, sponsored by people. Perhaps I had the priority of being close to the capital, so businessmen and companies from Pristina areas financed the war.
Were there also collections made abroad?
Po, nga
Yes, from everywhere where there were Albanian residents, there were organizations and money collections.
Who was Ali Ayeti?
Alajete
Ali Ayed is a martyr. He was killed in 1989.
Do you know anyone else by that name?
jo.
No.
Do you recall when the Rambouillet negotiations were?
Ka ndodhur gjatë shkurtë.
This occurred in the course of February and March.
Ndoshta edhe janari, nuk
Maybe January as well, I'm not certain.
99, right?
është proces që ka filluar më herë.
The process started earlier on. but it was sometime in 1999. But these negotiations were mentioned, or the start of the negotiations was probably mentioned also in 1998.
Were there internal meetings of the KLA held between members of the General Staff and the zone commanders in the lead up to and around that time?
Po,
Yes,
Were they frequent at that time?
nuk kanë qenë shpesh të
they were not frequent, but we met and knew each other better in relation to the discussion and your questions that you put to me earlier on, that I came to know Hashim Thaci and others better.
Were you in favor of the KLA sending a delegation to Rambouillet?
po ishim të gjithë.
Yes, we all were.
And were you in favor of it?
Po kam qenë
Yes, I was in favor of going to Rambouillet. However, my favorite person to go there was Adem Demaci, but he refused to be part of the delegation.
Did he have a meeting with General Staff members before refusing to attend?
Adem dhe Moqe, besëm.
You mean Adem Demaci? Yes.
Did the delegation members subsequently come and consult with other senior leadership of the KLA, including yourself, on the terms of the agreement?
Po, kjo është.
Yes. When they came back from Rambouillet, I was there. I attended.
When it came to signing the agreement, what was your view on what should be done?
Unë kam qenë kundër.
I was against it before they came back and talked with us.
And after you had spoken to them?
Unë kam folë në telefonata me ta.
I spoke to them over the phone and asked them to not sign the agreement, but upon their return they explained everything, and we agreed that they would go back to Rambouillet to continue the negotiations and sign the agreement.
So in the end you accepted, is that correct?
Po,
Yes.
What made you decide not to try and spoil the agreement by opposing?
kam folë me mua.
All my friends spoke with me. There were also other external factors that convinced me. And also, Adem Demaci said that we should continue on this path and sign the agreement, despite the fact that he was against it.
I'd like to show a document, please.
All right.
It's SPOE 0022876, and the English is the same with ET after it. In the Albanian, can we scroll down slightly? Do you recognize any of the signatures in that document?
Unë shoh që
I can see that one of those resembles my signature.
And in the Albanian version, if we look at the left of the signatures, do you see a partial KLA stamp there?
po.
Yes.
The text in the paragraph just above those signatures reads as follows. In conclusion, following all assessments about the final document, the KLA General Staff will pronounce its final opinion about the document after consulting the operational zone commanders. The General Staff is in favor of saying yes to the agreement. This is based on the positive opinions held in the Army, various Albanian state forums, opinions held by Albanian personalities with authority in the political and social domain, as well as the influence by various international mechanisms. Do you remember what this document refers to, Mr. Mustafa?
Nuk e njoh dokument.
I don't recognize the document and I don't remember anything, but I do know that if these people here have signed, I must have signed as well, but I don't remember anything in relation to this document.
Apologize for interrupting. I'm rising to my feet, but the reading from the last line of that passage of text was introduced another word or two to those which appear, so that the transcript is no longer corresponding. And it may be important, the words may be important, about influence of international factors, but it was based on various things as well as on various influential international mechanisms.
Yes,
rather than influence in relation to that.
Thank you.
Do you wish me to reread the last line, or is the record now clear?
If I can assist, I'm told that there has been a revised English translation provided to this, and I believe
it's not the same.
It's not the same as what's on our screen.
Which is the valid one?
Yes, it should be the revised version. I should
You are reading the revised version?
I should have called the revised number.
Oh, you did not, okay. Let's start over with that then.
So it's the same number with revised after it.
Any change in what you read?
No, it's consistent with what I read.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
And so I withdraw my comment. Now we have the explanation.
Thank you for pointing it out, though.
And Your Honours, I would like to tender this document, please.
No objection.
No objection being heard. SPOE 00228796 ET revised and the Albanian are admitted. Please assign a number.
Your Honours, that will receive exhibit number P227.
Thank you. You may proceed, Ms. Lawson.
Around the time of the Rambouillet negotiations, were there also internal discussions happening about the composition of the General Staff?
Po, kem
Yes, we discussed everything in relation to a better organization and better possibilities, opportunities for the Kosovo Liberation Army.
Was a new general commander, in fact, appointed at that time?
Po, më kujt.
Yes, I remember that for me he was the first commander. I had no knowledge that there was a commander before.
And who was appointed?
Është emëruar Süleyman Selim.
Suleiman Selimi was appointed.
Had there been other candidates proposed for the role?
Më kujtohet që është
I don't remember anybody else being proposed.
Was Bislam Zairapi considered?
po tash më kujtohet se
Now I remember that Bislim Zerapi was considered as an option.
Who was present at the meeting when the appointment of Suleiman Salimi was made?
kanë qenë komandantë të zonave.
The zone commanders were present.
Were there also members of the general staff present?
S'po më kujtohet
I don't remember.
që ka qenë
I know there was a misunderstanding. I think a member of the general staff, Sokol Bashota, was there, but then he left the meeting.
Was Recep Salimi present?
po ka mund
Yes, he might have been present.
Why was the
Excuse me, Your Honor, can we just take a quick break, if I may? If we just take a 5 minutes, just take a 5-minute break, and if we could, with the court's permission.
Microphone.
Adjourn for 5 minutes. Thank you.
All right. All right.
Be seated, please. And please bring the witness back.
I think.
You're feeling all
for the
right.
interruption, so thank you.
Your Honours, before we start, Your Honours, the interpreters have a request if the microphones could be brought closer to the witness, please.
You may be seated. The interpreters also ask witness that you sit a little closer to the microphones so that they can pick up your statements more easily. Ms. Lawson, we're ready for you.
So, Mr. Mustafa, we had been discussing the change in general commander of the KLA. Why was that change made?
Për neve nuk ishte ndryshim.
It did not constitute a change as far as we're concerned. As far as I was concerned, that was an appointment.
Did you consider how it might impact the delegation in Rambouillet?
Edhe kjo ka qenë.
It was one of the additional reasons we wanted to assist the delegation to suggest that we would not accept any old agreement offered to us, but that the agreement ought to be fully consistent with the interests of the nation.
So it was intended to provide additional support to the negotiations, is that correct?
Ishte edhe kjo pjesë.
This was one of the reasons, but we also needed to have a commander and for everybody to know who that commander was.
I'm going to change topic. Was one of the purposes of the intelligence sector to gather information on collaborators?
Ka mujt me qenë edhe ja.
It may have been one of the girls, yes.
Was discovering psychological and propagandistic activities one of the tasks of the intelligence sector?
Për kësaj perspektive unë
With hindsight, I can focus on intelligence in wider terms, but at the time I wasn't able to understand and assess it in the terms that we're discussing now.
I'm sorry, may we have some clarity when the term intelligence sector is used, if the witness is being asked about the lap zone or something else, and over what period of time? And I'm sorry.
Microphone, please.
As opposed to the general staff, and also time, it's properly timed questions.
Yes, I'm referring to the intelligence sector in the lap zone, which the witness would presumably be most familiar with, and from its operation. Was your answer based on that understanding, Mr. Mustafa?
po unë e kam ditë.
Yes, I was aware that there was an individual in every unit who would take care of potential risks that the unit and the entire zone could be facing.
Was one of the duties of the sector for morale to pay attention to the special warfare campaign?
Sektori moralit po mend.
You mean the sector for morale?
Yes.
Nuk më kujtohen të
I can't recall its tasks, but every sector within the Kosovo Liberation Army worked towards the empowerment and the further development of the war effort that it had undertaken.
We can call up a document, please. It's P00149, and the English is the same with ET after it. We looked already at this document on the first day, Mr. Mustafa. It's the regulation of the LAP operational zone, which you issued in December 1998. Could we please go to page 3? That is 242140 in the Albanian, and I think it's just page 3 in the English. If we look at the 5th paragraph from the bottom of the page, it states that one of the duties of the sector for morale was to observe, in cooperation with the intelligence sector, the methods and means of action of the enemy on the psychological, propagandistic, and subversive plane in the special warfare campaign. Do you see that?
Po shpërtësien
Yes, it will have come from the literature of the time. I don't know what the origin was, but I accept it at face value.
It refers to propaganda. Was spreading propaganda against the KLA considered to be a form of special warfare?
formë e veçantë nuk e di.
I don't know whether it was special, but there was a lot of propaganda during the war.
And if we just briefly go back one page, please, page 2 in the English and 2139 in the Albanian. Under the heading Intelligence Sector, we can see at the 4th bullet point that, as you confirmed, one of the tasks there was discovering psychological and propagandistic activities of the enemy in a timely manner. Was special warfare an issue of concern for the KLA?
Madam Prosecutor, we drafted these documents based on the literature that we were able to procure. The tasks were set as such. However, the duties of this sector were to gather information that had to do with the units they represented.
And was special warfare an issue of concern for the KLA?
Gjitha këto,
all of those points are here because the risk existed, otherwise they wouldn't be here. However, I don't think that at that time we had capacities or the means to be able to carry it out, to be frank with you.
We can take down the document for now. Did the General Staff discuss special warfare, either in public statements or in meetings?
I'm sorry again, before the witness answers that question, it's clear that counsel is asking about special warfare and the witness is answering about special warfare with no on the record explanation of what is meant by that term. And might I therefore request counsel to clarify what it is that she's cross-examining the witness about exactly and what is meant by special warfare in her questions and in the answers?
That would be helpful. I don't think it's come up in your questioning thus far. Perhaps just as a foundational question for the witness.
What do you understand by the term special warfare?
tash nuk kam në mend.
There is nothing in my mind at the moment. It depends on the context of its usage.
Phrase?
Zonja Kryetare,
Madam Prosecutor, I know it now, But when I was a zone commander at the age of 26, the environment was different and my knowledge was much more limited. However, there was some literature available which we put into these documents, but that does not mean that everything that we saw was something that we were about or we were able to accomplish for that matter.
Did the General Staff use the phrase special warfare and refer to it, either in public statements or in meetings?
I cannot recall, I don't think it was. And if it was used in a situation akin to this document. It might have been part and parcel of some literature. However, this was not discussed at the General Staff. I don't remember.
Did they issue warnings to people engaged in special warfare?
In fact, we did not know who they were.
Who are you referring to as they? You did not know who they were.
Those who were carrying out this special warfare. We were fighting against enemy troops, and within the enemy troops, you would find special warfare units. They were on the part of the enemy.
I'd like to bring up a document. It's P00156, and the English is the same with ET at the end. It's Communique 54, and again, it's a document which we already discussed on the first day of your testimony. Can you please read the last sentence of the bold text at the top of the page? It's the second paragraph of bold text, the last sentence. I apologize. Could you please read it out loud?
Which line do you mean? Because I'm not entirely certain.
So at the top of the page, there are two paragraphs of bold text going all the way across the page. I'd like you to read the last sentence of the bold text.
The
defeat in the field of battle has made the enemy angrier. It went all along taking revenge on the civilian population, on women and children, destroying dwellings.
Can you look at the... I can read the sentence if that's easier. It's the last sentence of the bold text at the top of the page. And it reads, all enemy missionaries and those who propagate for the special war, whoever they might be, will be treated according to the law in a war situation. the Kosovo Liberation Army's communique number 54 states. So the General Staff did address special war, didn't they?
Ik had trajtuar
It did treat this via a communique aimed for the public, but not with zone commanders like us.
Kështu mund të merren se element.
These should be taken as propaganda means, Madam Prosecutor. This does not mean that these issues were discussed within the forums of the Kosovo Liberation Army. Or rather that maybe somebody would have spoken about this, but nobody paid any heed. Commanders like us came from the ground. We saw people who were being burned alive, friends who died all around us, and we did not have at the time the luxury of talking about this kind of stuff. We can discuss this now, but not then.
Again, I promise this is the last time, and certainly on this issue. It's been extremely helpful to have that clarification explored. At page 36, line 21, the witness emphasised that the term special forces related to enemy forces. And in this passage that he's been taken to as well, there was a reference to special forces being part of the enemy forces. The questions that were being posed earlier were apparently premised on the notion that the special war related to something that the KLA was involved in. So can the questions please clarify that we are talking solely about a unit of the Serbian, or units of the Serbian side, rather than asking questions in a way which is inconsistent with the evidence that they rely on?
If this witness has that information, yes.
Referring to page 36, line 21, in the transcript of today's answers, which is just a few lines higher up, where he gave that answer in quite some detail.
Well, I believe it's not inconsistent with the evidence that's being relied upon. If we look at the actual language, it says enemy missionaries and those who propagate for the special war. So I don't believe that the materials are confined in the manner in which you just indicated.
I'm so sorry, if you read the entire bullet point, it begins with, following the Serbian forces' retreat, it looks as though their place is being taken by some collaborators and political activists who are spreading defeatism. It then goes on. The answer on the transcript is not from the document. The answer on the transcript is page 36, line 21. It might be an idea if we all looked at that. And this answer, this passage from this paper says exactly what the witness has just said, which is entirely different from the basis on which the questions were being put.
Well, I believe the very text that you just read, Mr. Emerson, indicates that it's not confined in that manner.
I'm sorry, again, I don't want to descend into an argument, but could we address the answers given by the witness at page 36, line 21?
Once again, perhaps on cross-examination, it would be better for you to try to explore that and clarify it. She has done her best to clarify it. This witness has done his best to clarify it. So we'll move on. Thank you.
Was it a continuing concern for the KLA, special warfare? Was it expressed in other public statements around this time?
Lufta.
Special warfare has never been separate from the enemy forces, the Serbian forces, and Serbian forces in the apparatus of war has always been of concern to us. But I would not confine myself to this term.
It was people who were considered to be acting in the interests of the enemy forces, is that correct?
Që
those who collaborated or those who were part of the structures of the enemy forces.
Did the LAP zone ever issue statements or written materials expressing concern about special warfare or propaganda activities?
It may have been expressed in general terms, and given that we see this from the General Staff, the LAP Operations Zone may have followed or written about the same. However, it was not of any special significance as far as I'm concerned at the time.
I'd like to show you a document, and again, it's one that we've looked at previously and you were familiar with. It is P00155, and the English translation is the same with ET.
Your Honor, the requested document is not in the presentation queue.
It's a document that we showed on the first day, so I will recheck the reference, but if now is a good time to break, I see it's 2 minutes to 11.
Microphone, please.
Break now, witness, for a half hour. You'll be back here at 11:30. We are adjourned till 11:30.
All rise. All rise.
Be seated, please. Madam Usher, you can bring the witness in. You may be seated. Thank you, witness. We're ready to proceed. Ms. Lawson, you still have the floor.
Thank you. And just before the break, we were discussing whether the LAP zone ever issued statements or written material expressing concern about special warfare. The document, the number that I should have called was P00151, and the English version has ET at the end. And we can please go to the last page in both English and Albanian. I'm going to read the last sentence. It says, "And we dare the propagators and agitators who did the occupiers' work during its offensive and immediately afterwards to try and play the same role. KLA will not be merciful anymore for those who repeat the faults." Did the LAP zone prepare or issue a brochure or a pamphlet about special war?
Po ky qenë ka vetë një
This one seems to be indeed a pamphlet.
Are you aware of any other similar pamphlets about special war issued by the LAP zone?
mundet me pas kështu.
There might be similar pamphlets, but I don't remember them. As a matter of fact, I don't remember this one either, but I am ready to accept it as mine.
I'd like to show another document. It is P00164, and the English has ET at the end. And we can stay on the first page to begin. Can you please read the title and the date out loud?
Nuk është koment.
I do not recognize this text, Madam Prosecutor.
Can you please read the title and the date out loud?
15/4
15th April 1999, it seems. Kosovo Liberation Army, Public Information Service, Special Warfare.
nëntori 1900.
November 1998.
Can we please go to the second last page? It's U002-2821 in both versions. You can see there that it was issued by the LAP Operational Zone Information Service.
Po e shoh.
Yes, I see it. I don't remember it, but this seems to be propaganda material based on literature sources of the time.
What would the purpose of such material have been?
Njohjen ndoshta propagandistik, po
Propaganda material, perhaps. I wouldn't be able to tell now exactly. I would probably need to see the entire material to give a comment. Drafted by officials who were close to me, and they intended to prepare this type of document, and they did.
We can turn to page U002-2811. There's a heading, Special Warfare During the Serbian Offensive. And the first sentence under that heading reads, Special warfare reached its highest point during the Serbian offensive. Do you understand that to be a reference to the summer 1998 offensive?
I wouldn't comment on it because I don't remember the document itself. However, I don't see anything wrong in it. War propaganda. Officials, my people from my zone, sat down and drafted this document based on available literature. I have not read this.
Was there a focus on collaborators and special warfare at the time and after the Serbian offensive?
Not special.
You mean there wasn't in particular? And heightened, it wasn't a heightened issue? Is that what you mean at that time?
No, these were dealt with when events happened there and then, danger occurring. So depending on the developments on the ground involving our units. Now, you know that in every war we should exercise caution with respect to the enemy collaborators, and this was one of the things that we did as well.
And I'd like to refer to a prior statement. It's part 4, pages 2 to 3 in English. And again, part 4, pages 2 to 3 in Albanian. And there's a reference there to the loss of territory previously held and the fact that enemy forces were able to enter any part they really wanted. And then the question was this amongst other factors, but did that heighten, did that raise the view that collaborators revealing military secrets, positions, really were a major problem because you have this situation now? Answer, not in our zone specifically, no. Question, but across the other areas of the KLA, the offensive, the September offensive was Kosovo-wide. Answer, yes, it was. Yes, it was a very general, or it went all over the territory. And this became a much greater issue after that. So I can give you my opinion why, what I assume was why. Maybe it was easier for us to find fault with the people close at hand rather than with the enemy. The enemy was so big. We wanted to point the blame or to put the blame on someone who was close at hand. Question. So easier to blame perceived collaborators or those who were operating behind your backs against you? Answer, that's my opinion now. That's what I assume. Is that your opinion, Mr. Mustafa?
As you noted reading, this was an assumption. I agree, we had this discussion.
And you confirm that that is your assumption or opinion? That's your assessment?
It's an assumption and opinion. I did not. This is how I thought at times.
Did the LAP Zone Command issue any communiques?
It depends on what you call a communique. Press releases, yes, we did. They might have been called communiques.
Well, more specifically, did the Zone Command issue any communiques concerning special war?
With the title communique, I don't know, but I do know that documents were issued for the public from the zone where I was.
I'd like to bring up an extract from the archives of Radio Free Kosovo, covering the period March and April 1999. Can we please bring up 008348? And the English is the same with ET after it. As a preliminary matter, what was Radio Free Kosovo?
It was a radio who cooperated closely with us. We consider it to be our radio.
By our, do you mean the KLA?
We thought it to be ours. I am not sure whether it was ours or not. But we communicated with them as we did with our entities, and just like we did with other Albanian media.
The heading indicates that this is a communique of the command of the LAP operational zone of the KLA.
Madam Prosecutor, depending on the journalist or the reporter and the KLA, the denomination was agreed upon or decided. So it could be just an information, but I accept it as it is.
And the second paragraph on the first page of the document refers to individuals who, quote, hide behind the so-called legal political parties and quasi-state institutions, end quote. And we see in this first sentence of the second paragraph a call on these people to, quote, stop their destructive and completely anti-national activity. And finally, if we go to 008356, which is a continuation of the same communique.
Apologies, the item is not in the presentation queue.
I may have called the wrong number. It's 008350. It's part of the same document. I apologize. And it states that these people started a special war against the KLA to discredit and eliminate it from the stage so that they can, quote, continue swimming in their dirty waters. We finished with the document, thank you. You indicated earlier that special warfare may have been referred to in public statements, but it wasn't addressed in meetings with the General Staff. Is that your position?
Yes, it's still my position. Allow me to say that I did not recognize the last document, and this is not the wording I would have used or my collaborators would have used. It must have been drafted by a journalist, a reporter, or somebody else. I wouldn't be able to say who.
Let me show you another document. It is IT-05-87.1 space P00446. And the English is the same number with a .e after it. We can see at the top that this is a December 1998 report on the statements of the operative zones, and it's addressed to the Deputy General Commander of the General Staff. Can we please go to the last page? Do you recognize the signature?
Yes, and the name is there. I wouldn't have been able to recognize the signature, but now that I see the name above it.
Whose signature is it?
It reads Bislim Zurabi, Colonel Bislim Zurabi, Chief of Staff of the KLA.
Can we please go to the third page of the document under the heading Defence and Safety? And it's reported that, quote, special units and military police provide special help by successfully facing the enemy's special war and its collaborators. So special war was a matter the zones were reporting on to the general staff, right?
I don't remember these things. Now, this is a document that if it was extracted from the archives, I have no reason to object to it. Or I don't remember it and I haven't seen it. This is the time I was referring to yesterday in relation to numerous recommendations that we didn't follow necessarily.
Your Honours, I'd like to tender the document, please.
Any objection?
I guess we would have an objection. The witness has said he has no recollection of the document, and there may be perhaps witnesses coming who will have a better opportunity to lay some foundation for the document.
Anybody else?
Nothing to add.
Nothing to add, Your Honor.
Same, nothing to add, but support the objection.
It appears to be prima facie in line with, excuse me, in line with 138. IT 0587.1 P00446 is admitted.
Your Honours, that will be Exhibit B 228.
Let's look at another document, and it's one we discussed already this morning. It's P00181, and the English has ET after it. We can go to page SPOE 0022666 initially, please. Do you remember that we discussed this document earlier this morning?
Yes, I remember seeing it for the first time today.
Can we go to the next page, please, to 6667? Your name is written at the top, and under that there's what appears to be a situation report. At bullet point 6 it says, special war and propaganda not present. Is that correct, that there wasn't special war or propaganda present in the lap zone at that time?
I cannot know that there was no propaganda at all, but we did not notice something in particular.
So there wouldn't have been an issue with special war such that you would need to have raised it with the general staff?
I don't remember it being a concern.
And we can take down the document, thank you. What was the National Guard?
These battalions were formed sometime after the beginning of the NATO bombing. They are special units that came out of composed of experienced fighters and operated under the zone command. Every zone was supposed to have a battalion. I know for my zone we did have such a battalion. I don't know about the other zones.
Did you have involvement in its creation? You just mentioned that you established the battalions under the LAP zone command. Is that correct? Were you involved in that?
I ordered the creation of this battalion.
Who did you receive the instruction or order from to create the National Guard?
I am not certain, but I think the National Guard was formed at the national level, country level. I don't remember any more details. I was more focused on my zone and the battalion under my command.
Can we look at SPOE 00228147? And the English is the same with ET at the end.
There is only an English version in the presentation queue.
If we can see the top of the screen, please. There's a fax mark there showing it was sent on the 14th of May 1999. Does that sound approximately right in terms of the date when you would have been establishing the National Guard?
It seems, yes.
The document was copied to the zone commands. Do you remember seeing or receiving this document?
No, I don't remember it. I don't even remember using fax during the war. Fax machine.
Yesterday you identified a photograph showing the location of the Kolavica headquarters. When did you enter Pristina?
On the 11th June 1999.
How did you enter?
Based on an operative order I had prepared with my staff. The National Guard was with me, whereas the other units were on both flanks of the zone at the entry of Pristina.
Did the National Guard report to you, or who did they report to?
Po shef shtapit ka lajmëruar, po ka unë në këtë kohë.
They reported to the staff, but at this time I was very close to them. I was directly involved in this matter.
The staff being the lap zone command staff, is that correct?
Po.
Yes, the staff that I was leading.
Where were your headquarters in Pristina?
Në Kolovic.
At Kolovic.
Pasi.
You mean after the 11th of June?
Was that the location you identified in the photograph yesterday?
Po.
Yes.
Was your zone command staff based there with you?
Pjesërisht.
Partly.
Which parts?
Ishen
The public information sector, the chief of communications, and other parts. However, several officers were discharging duties in other areas of the zone.
Was Latif Gashi with you?
Jo, Latif Gashi ka.
No, Latif Gashi had been tasked with waiting for a group of British military forces arriving in the villages and mountains of Golak.
That was at the time of entry, is that correct?
Po.
Yes.
After that, was he subsequently based at the Kolovice headquarters with you?
Ka pas për detyrë me qenë.
His task was to stay in Podujev because on the 19th of September, KLA forces entered the city there, and they went and stabilized themselves the best way they could, along with Castrati and the brigade commander Arif Mucholi. He had been tasked with looking after the troops of the Kosovo Liberation Army, as well as establish contact with K4 and the international community in order for the situation there to stabilize.
It may have been just an interpretation issue, but did you refer to September? To the 19th of September?
No, it may have been a mistake. It is June. 19th of June.
How long were you based there for?
Nuk jam I sigurt, por
I'm not certain, but until the conditions were created for the headquarters to move to the center of Pristina. It may be a period of 8 to 9 months, but I'm not certain. However, records exist of when we moved from one place to another.
Do you today accept the verdicts which found you responsible pursuant to joint criminal enterprise liability and command responsibility for the detention and mistreatment of civilians?
unë kam pranuar.
I accepted the judgment as was. However, with my lawyers, I objected to parts of that judgment, however, I accepted the final verdict rendered.
Do you accept that detainees in the LAP operational zone were beaten and killed?
Jo, nuk e pranoj.
No, I don't accept it. There was no system of beating or murder there. They could have been beaten up during the journey. However, when they arrived at our command at the detention facilities, the care for them was good.
So are you accepting that it could have occurred that people were beaten in the LAP zone after they were arrested?
Nuk kam qenë ndjeni, por unë
I had no knowledge, but I cannot exclude it. I had no knowledge of a single case, however.
So just so we're clear on your position, you have no knowledge of beatings having occurred in the LAP zone, but you don't exclude it having happened after people were arrested by the KLA.
asnjëherë s'kam pas nevojë tjetër.
There was no need for me to express any concern whatsoever on this issue because there has never been a report on it.
I want to be clear with you and tell you what our case is. It's our case that this did occur, that you had good reason to know that you had the means to know that, and that you did in fact know what happened to the detainees. I'm going to put some points to you. You described to us already that you had a relationship of trust with Latif Ghashi. Isn't that correct?
Po me gjitha përvojat.
Yes, I had a relationship of trust with all the officers of the time.
You told us that Latif Ghashi was a member of the LAP Zone Command. Isn't that right?
Po.
Yes.
You told us that you yourself appointed him to his position, right?
Po.
Yes.
Ishte marrëveshje bashkëpunim.
It was a question of cooperation with the entire members of the staff of the time. However, I accept that as being my decision.
You told us that Latif Ghashi reported directly to the zone staff that you led. That is, he reported to yourself, your deputy, and your chief of staff, correct?
Sakt.
Correct.
You told us that you appointed Nazif Mehmeti to his command role in the military police, correct?
Si zavendës komandant.
As a deputy commander, he was as a representative of police.
And that he reported directly to the zone command, that is, to yourself, your deputy, and the chief of staff, correct?
Sakt.
Correct.
And that the zone command did receive reports from him, correct?
Sakt.
Correct.
You also visited the police command building in La Pastiche, right?
Po.
Yes.
The police command building, which was where the detainees were, was less than 200 meters from your headquarters, correct?
Nuk muna me thonë më pak, po
I cannot say any closer. However, they were close to us at all times.
And you even ate your meals at the police command building, isn't that right?
kjo s'ka qenë e përhershme.
This did not happen all the time, but there were occasions when I had my food at the police building.
And you saw some of the detainees around the place.
Po,
Yes.
You authorized or ordered certain arrests, correct?
po,
Yes.
You made decisions about the continued detention or release of certain detainees, correct?
varësisht dokumenta.
Depending on the documents that came to me for signature, that is what I did. I signed them.
You received information on the circumstances of some of the arrests, didn't you?
Po,
Yes.
And for example, you know that some people resisted, don't you?
po, si që kam shpjeguar dje.
Yes, as I was able to explain yesterday.
And you accept that those people could have been beaten, don't you?
Unë them se deri
I state that given at the point where they were under the control of my soldiers, they could have been beaten up to the point where their resistance had been defeated.
I'd like to call up a prior statement, please. It's SPOE 000-87274 at page 87290. And you state there, Your Honour, there were no systematic policies of torture. Someone could have been tortured up until the point when they were detained, at the time when they would arrive at the detention centres, at the houses where we would hold them. I had reason at any time to suspect that anyone was abused. And if we go to the SPO transcript, part 11, page 6. And part 11, revised, page 7 in the Albanian. You say, it's not that it was allowed, but we had cases where people resisted, and it's possible that they were beaten up until when they were brought to the detention centre where Nazif Mehmeti was. And from the moment that they entered the detention centre, there was never any complaint that anybody was beat. Were there complaints of beatings from before people entered the detention centre?
Nuk kam pasur në
No, I did not receive any complaints at the time. I spoke here about the possibility regarding the behavior of my soldiers and policemen.
And the reality is that beatings did occur, isn't that correct?
Mr. President, I've let a long string of leading questions go, and at this point I'm forced to rise because it looks like it's going to continue to be a cross-examination. So I object to the leading.
Your Honour, I believe pursuant to paragraph 107 of the conduct of proceedings, I'm entitled to lead the witness where I need to put my case to him.
And you have put your case to him, and you will be allowed to continue your questions.
I can read my last question. The reality is that beatings occurred, isn't that correct?
Për mua nuk është e vërtetë.
As far as I'm concerned, it is not.
Do you believe that Latif Gashi and Nazif Mehmeti were lying to you about the treatment of the detainees?
Unë ende besoj
I continue to believe that they exercise their functions in a just manner.
And you could have entered the detention buildings at any time to inspect them if you had wanted to, couldn't you?
s'ka pas diçka.
There was no obstacle, but there was never a reason for me to do that or to doubt that somebody was being mistreated in there.
It was authorized for collaborators to even be executed, wasn't it?
Nuk është lejuar asnjëherë.
No, this was never allowed, and there were no such cases, Madam Prosecutor.
Were there collaborators executed in the lapse zone?
Nëse mendoni që kanë
If you think that there has been murder before the war, during the war, that was a wartime. However, there is not a single case of somebody who would have been detained and executed afterwards.
Did you authorize assassinations of collaborators?
nuk kam autorizuar asgjë.
No, I authorized no such thing. But I took responsibility for everything that happened within my command, and I have expressed myself publicly about those cases.
Did you conduct assassinations of collaborators?
I
Personally,
rise before the witness answers that, because obviously the line of questioning has been permitted on the basis that the prosecution is putting its case. Can I ask it that be clarified whether the prosecution is alleging that this witness assassinated anybody, and if so, on what basis? If it's not, then it's not part of their case.
No, you may not. It was merely a question by the prosecutor. You may proceed.
Can you answer my question, please, Mr. Mustafa?
Unë kam qenë
I was a fighter, Madam Prosecutor.
Did you conduct such assassinations?
asnjëherë nuk di.
I do not know. I am not certain that I've ever killed a person.
I'd like to show a document, please. P00118. Both the English and Albanian versions are in that same document. One is at 68267. Yes, and then the same document has the Albanian in it as well. Thank you. Do you know who Bayram Krasniqi is?
No, I can't recall the time. However, this is a document that was assessed in 1993 and it was deemed to be false.
Is the document false, Mr. Mustafa? I'm not asking for the court's assessment. I'm asking for your position.
I expressed my opinion when I was asked by the court, and there is a ruling on this document. I have nothing to say to what I stated at the time.
Can you please tell us what that opinion is?
As I stated at the time, it is a document that is false, and I do not recognize it as my own.
We can take the document down, thank you. What was your position in 1999 and 2000?
My position as zone commander. I continue to be a zone commander.
Under what organization in the year 2000?
The Kosovo Liberation Army was transformed into the Kosovo Protection Corps, and I continue to be a commander with the Kosovo Protection Corps.
When did you leave the Kosovo Protection Corps?
In 2001.
Since that time, have you ever worked for one of the accused in this case?
You mean for one of the accused? I'm not sure I understand.
For Mr. Thaci, Mr. Vaseli, Mr. Salimi, or Mr. Krasniqi since that time?
Yes, I did work as part of the Democratic Party of Kosovo, which was led by Chairman Thaci.
During what period of time?
Në vitin 96
I joined the Democratic Party of Kosovo in 1996 and I became a deputy chairman of the Democratic Party of Kosovo.
Are you still a member, or when did you leave it?
Jo, jam antar ende.
I continue to be a member, though not an active one.
During Mr. Thaci's time as president, were you ever employed to work for his office?
Po, isha këshilltar.
Yes, I served as advisor in Hashim Thaci's office.
What?
Mendoj në 2019.
I think it was in 2019.
Do you remember how long you worked for his office?
Nuk e kuptoj saktësisht, po unë
I don't remember exactly, but I have been close to Mr. Thaci all the time, ever since I joined the Democratic Party of Kosovo.
Do you remember the date on which you were appointed to that role?
jo, zmi.
No, I don't.
Do you remember what your salary was, approximately?
Nuk më kujtohet tash.
I can't recall it exactly. It did change with time.
Can we show document 076693, please? The Albanian is at 76693, which is the first page, and the English is at 76697 of that same document. Do you recognize what that document is?
Nuk po kujtohet që
I can't recall having had possession of it, but I see that it has to do with the post that I held within the presidency of Kosovo.
If we look at the first page, this indicates a date of appointment of the 14th of February 2019. Does that sound accurate?
ashtu po shkruan këtu.
That's what I see written here.
Accurate?
Besoj që po s'ka.
I think so. There would have been no reason for someone to forge it.
And if we go to the third page of each, please, it's 76699 in the English and 76695 in the Albanian. At the bottom of each page. Your annual salary for working in the President's office is indicated there as €18,000. Does that sound accurate?
Jo, nuk është.
No, it is not.
What do you believe the salary was?
Besoj ka qenë edhe më.
I think it was lower, however, with bonuses, maybe I'll accept it the way it is here.
Your Honours, I'd like to tender this document, please.
Any objection?
No objection.
Objection.
076693, Albanian version, and 76697, English version is admitted.
Your Honors, that will be Exhibit P 229.
Thank you.
Your Honours, I have no further questions at this time, but I would like to tender some documents that I used during my examination.
Mr. President, I have an objection now. I thought that the case was going to be put to him on what she's using the document for, and the witness should have an opportunity to comment if there's going to be an allegation made concerning his salary with the President's office. He should have a fair opportunity to comment on any allegation that'll be made later.
We don't know that he wants to comment.
Well, we should ask him.
Ms. Lawson, please ask the witness if he has any comment on that last document.
Do you have any comments you wish to make on the document that we just looked at?
Mr. President, again, I'm sorry to interrupt. It's not the document, it's what the allegation that the prosecution may make on the basis of the document is, and he should be able to comment.
I don't think we need to lead him any further from that objection. The question is, do you have any comment?
No, I don't. I accept the document as it is.
Ms. Lawson, how many documents do you wish to submit?
I wish to tender the Commander Remy Speaks book, the pages of the Zatia book, which I used during the examination.
Could I suggest with leave from the defense that you make a list, maybe over the noon hour or prior to tomorrow, and submit it at that time, so that we don't have to go through and recite the entirety?
Mr. President, to be helpful, we certainly are also going to be using the book. It may be better if we wait until the witness's evidence is finished so that we have one exhibit with all the relevant pages that were used in his examination rather than...
I'm speaking of the entire group, not just one, not just the book.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yes, Your Honour, we'll compile a list. We'll share it with the, we'll share it with the defence.
It's just a little less, a little more efficient and less prone to error. So.
Absolutely.
So we will do that. She can present that tomorrow, since we aren't going to be meeting again after today, until tomorrow, or after this session, I should say. Are you ready to proceed? Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Laws, I'm sorry. I don't mean to skip you. Do you wish to? Do you still wish to examine this witness?
Well, yes, I do, please, and I have pending my application for permission to do just that.
Hold on just a moment, please. So the panel notes that in F0, just give me a moment.
Okay.
1285 and 1583 and 1655, Victims' Counsel notified panel and the parties of its intention to question witness 4746 with the leave of the panel, as the witness is not a victim, and some of Victims' Counsel proposed questions fall outside the scope of paragraph 33 of the order on the conduct of proceedings. Victims' Counsel submitted that these questions are of a matter of a legitimate interest to victims participating in the proceedings in seeking to establish the truth about what happened to them. The panel also notes that during the 20 March 2023 status conference, Victims' Counsel informed the panel that he had liaised with the SPO to ensure there would be no duplication of questions in relation to these topics. With this in mind, and in light of the questions already asked by the SPO, the panel would like to know from Victims' Counsel. As you have stated, you still intend to ask the questions. I apologize for my voice. I seem to be losing it like you were too. So, Mr. Laws, anything you want to add to your application?
Yes, please.
Go ahead.
Might it be better for the witness to withdraw whilst we deal with this issue? Thank you.
Madam Usher, would you please escort the witness out of the room just for a moment to make a record. All right, Mr. Laws.
Well, thank you. As Your Honour has noted, my application to cross-examine this witness goes beyond the harm done to the victim participating in the proceedings and its circumstances and consequences. Pausing there, the principal victim in respect of whom I wish to ask questions is a single status victim who has the protective measures of, amongst other things, anonymity. And I'm conscious that this discussion as it develops, and indeed my cross-examination, will reveal implicitly to those listening his identity. So I'm going to ask that we move into private session, please. No. My request was...
You want to go into private session now?
I do.
All right. All right, we will go into private session.
Your Honors, we're now in public session.
Thank you. We are adjourned.
All rise.